The evening sun cast long shadows across the vast industrial wasteland of Dravis 9. Heaps of discarded technology, broken spacecraft parts, and obsolete machinery stretched as far as the eye could see. In this forgotten corner of the galaxy, where unwanted refuse from more prosperous worlds was dumped, Kale hunched over a promising pile of scrap, his calloused hands methodically sorting through potential salvage. "Come on," he muttered, wiping sweat from his brow with a grimy forearm. "There's got to be at least one functioning power core in this mess." At 32, Kale had spent half his life in this junkyard at the edge of civilization. His workshop, a repurposed shipping container reinforced with salvaged metal panels, sat a kilometer away, perched on the boundary between the sprawling waste field and the dilapidated settlement that barely qualified as a town. The locals called it the Dregs, fitting for a place where both machines and dreams came to die. Kale's scavenging had kept him alive after the mining corporation had abandoned the planet, taking the economy with it. Only those too poor or too stubborn remained. Kale fell into both categories, making a meager living by repairing discarded tech with parts harvested from the junkyard. As twilight deepened, he considered calling it a day. The temperature was dropping rapidly, one of the quirks of Dravis 9's unstable atmosphere. Then, a faint sound caught his attention. A soft, rattling wheeze, almost mechanical but somehow organic. "Hello," Kale called out, instantly regretting it. The junkyard was notorious for hosting squatters, desperate addicts, and occasionally predators, both animal and sentient. The sound came again, weaker this time. Against his better judgment, Kale moved toward it, shifting a large sheet of twisted hull plating. What he found beneath made him recoil. Curled in a fetal position inside a cracked biological containment unit was a humanoid figure, but not entirely human. Silver scales covered parts of her body. Small, curved horns protruded from her forehead, and delicate claws tipped her fingers. Her eyes, when they flickered open at his approach, glowed a faint amber. "Water," the creature rasped, her voice barely audible. The word seemed to take all her strength. Kale stood frozen, his mind racing. She appeared to be some kind of genetic hybrid, part human, part something reptilian. Experiments like this were illegal in most systems, but rumors persisted of military black ops creating biological weapons. His first instinct was to walk away. Getting involved with something like this meant trouble. But as he looked at her emaciated form, the cuts and bruises marking her pale skin between patches of silver scales, something in him couldn't turn away. "Damn it," he muttered. Then louder, "Hold on. I'll be back." Kale hurried to his nearby salvage cart, grabbed his water canteen, and returned to the strange girl's side. Gently lifting her head, he pressed the container to her cracked lips. She drank desperately, water spilling down her chin. After she had drunk her fill, Kale made a decision that would change everything. He carefully lifted her from the broken containment unit. She weighed almost nothing in his arms, her body burning with an unnatural fever. Whatever she was dying. "I'm taking you somewhere safe," he said, uncertain if she could even understand him. "Just hang on." The journey back to his workshop took twice as long with his fragile cargo. By the time he arrived, night had fallen completely. He kicked open the door and laid the girl on his narrow bunk. Under the bright lights of his home, he could see her clearly. She appeared to be in her early 20s, with pale skin interspersed with patches of silver scales that caught the light like mirrors. Her features were delicate, almost elfin, though the small horns and slightly elongated pupils gave her an otherworldly aspect. Her breathing was shallow and irregular. Kale was no doctor, but years of solitary living had taught him basic medical skills. He cleaned her wounds with antiseptic, wrapped her in his cleanest blanket, and set up a makeshift fort from his emergency supplies. All the while, his diagnostic scanner ran over her body, analyzing her condition. The results made no sense. "Species unknown," the scanner reported. "DNA structure contains multiple unidentified sequences. Warning, unusual energy signature detected." Kale frowned at the readings. The girl's body temperature fluctuated wildly, sometimes spiking to levels that should have been fatal. Yet she lived. Even more puzzling, she emitted faint energy signatures unlike anything in his database. "What are you?" he whispered. As if in response, her eyes fluttered open. They were extraordinary, amber irises with vertical pupils that contracted in the light. For a moment, she stared at him in confusion and fear. "You're safe," Kale said quickly. "I found you in the junkyard. You were dying." She tried to speak but coughed instead. Kale helped her drink more water. "My name is Kale," he said. "Can you tell me yours?" The girl closed her eyes, seeming to search her memory. "Nira," she finally whispered. I am Nira. Do you know what happened to you? How you ended up in that containment unit?" Pain crossed her features. "Fragments. Only fragments. They made me. Then they discarded me." A chill ran down Kale's spine. "Who made you?" "Project Dragones." Her voice faded as exhaustion claimed her, and she slipped back into unconsciousness. Kale stayed by her side through the night, monitoring her vitals. Several times, her temperature spiked so high that the blanket covering her began to smoke. Yet by morning, she seemed stronger. Unknown to them both, a dormant tracking chip embedded deep in Nira's tissue had activated when Kale's scanner swept her body. High above Dravis 9, an automated satellite received the signal and relayed it to a distant military installation. Subject D7 located. Status alive. Coordinates transmitting. In a sterile laboratory across the galaxy, a security alert flashed on a screen. A technician noted the coordinates and immediately contacted her superior. "Sir, we've located the failed prototype. Somehow it survived. Deploy a recovery team immediately," came the terse reply. "That aberration cannot be allowed to remain in the wild. The project is too sensitive." "Understood, Dr. Merrick." Dispatching units now. Back on Dravis 9, Kale faced a crisis of conscience. Harboring what was clearly a military experiment put him in grave danger. The smart move would be to take her back to the junkyard and wash his hands of the whole affair. But each time he considered it, the image of her broken body in that discarded containment unit stopped him. Someone had created her, used her, and then thrown her away like garbage when she didn't meet their specifications. It was a feeling Kale understood all too well. By midday, Nira awoke again. This time, she managed to sit up, though the effort clearly drained her. "You should lie down," Kale advised, bringing her a bowl of synthesized protein broth. "You're still very weak." Nira accepted the bowl with trembling hands. "Why did you help me?" she asked, her voice stronger than before, but still raspy. Kale shrugged. "Couldn't just leave you there to die. Most would have." There was no self-pity in her statement, just a matter-of-fact acknowledgement. As she ate, Kale observed her with fascination. The scales on her arms seemed to shift in color slightly as she moved, reflecting the light differently from various angles. Her movements, though weak, had an unusual grace to them. "You said you were made," Kale prompted carefully. "Do you remember anything about that?" Nira's amber eyes grew distant. "Laboratories. Tests. Pain." She paused, struggling with the memories. "I was not the first. There were others before me. They wanted weapons with the strength of ancient creatures. Dragons, they called them. Dragons? Those are just myths. Not myths. Extinct." Nira touched one of her small horns. DNA recovered from preserved specimens. Combined with other things. She looked at her hand, where small claws extended from her fingertips. "I was supposed to be stable, combat ready, but I was defective. My power." She broke off as the bowl in her hands suddenly grew hot enough that Kale could see the broth beginning to bubble. "Whoa!" He quickly took the bowl from her. "How did you do that?" Fear flashed across Nira's face. "I cannot control it. That is why they discarded me. The energy it builds inside becomes too much." As if to demonstrate, her skin began to glow faintly, and the temperature in the room noticeably increased. Sweat beaded on Kale's forehead. "Hey, calm down," he said, keeping his voice steady despite his growing alarm. "Take a deep breath. You're safe here." Nira closed her eyes, her chest rising and falling as she fought for control. Gradually, the glow subsided, and the temperature returned to normal. "I'm sorry," she whispered. "It happens when I feel afraid." Kale cautiously sat on the edge of the bed. So this Project Dragones, they were trying to create some kind of bioweapon using dragon DNA? That's insane. Not insane. Ambitious. Nira's expression darkened. They wanted soldiers who could survive any environment, who could generate their own weapons, who could not be detected as artificial. And when you couldn't control your abilities, they threw you away. Kale felt a surge of anger. "Left you to die in a junkyard on a forgotten planet." Nira nodded. "I was scheduled for termination. But one of the scientists, she helped me escape. Put me in stasis. I remember only fragments after that." A sudden beeping from Kale's security system interrupted them. He moved quickly to the monitor and felt his blood run cold. The local enforcement drone was making an unscheduled sweep of the area, using heat signatures to scan for illegal operations. "We need to get you hidden," he said urgently, helping Nira to her feet. "Your heat signature will set off every alarm they have." He guided her to a hidden compartment beneath the floor, a smuggler's hold from when the shipping container had served its original purpose. It was barely big enough for one person. "Stay absolutely quiet," he instructed as he closed the panel. The enforcement drone passed overhead, its sensors sweeping the workshop. Kale busied himself with a harmless repair job, presenting the picture of a law-abiding citizen. After what seemed like an eternity, the drone moved on. When Kale opened the hidden compartment, he found Nira curled in a tight ball, her body trembling violently. "They found me," she gasped. "They're coming for me." "It was just a routine patrol," Kale assured her, helping her back to the bed. "Nothing to do with you." But Nira shook her head frantically. "No, I can feel it. The tracker, it's active again." "Tracker? What tracker?" "Inside me." Her hand went to the back of her neck. All subjects were implanted. I thought the stasis would have deactivated it, but she didn't need to finish. If she was right, whoever had created her now knew exactly where to find her. And Kale had just become guilty of harboring military property. The next few days established a rhythm. Nira grew stronger, her body healing at an astonishing rate. Her presence transformed Kale's solitary existence. For the first time in years, he had someone to talk to, someone who listened to his stories of life before Dravis. 9 became a wasteland. In turn, Nira shared fractured memories of her creation. The endless tests, the other failures she had seen destroyed, the rare moments of kindness from one of the scientists who had ultimately helped her escape. Despite the danger, Kale couldn't bring himself to regret his decision to help her. There was something about Nira that awakened long-dormant feelings in him. Protective instincts, yes, but also a sense of purpose he had thought lost forever. On the 5th day, Nira ventured outside the workshop for the first time. Kale had fashioned a hooded cloak to hide her most obvious non-human features, though nothing could be done about her distinctive eyes. "It has been so long since I felt the sun," she said, tilting her face upward. The scales along her cheekbones caught the light, shimmering like liquid metal. "Don't get too comfortable," Kale warned, scanning the horizon nervously. "We should keep this short." They walked along the perimeter of the junkyard, Nira stopping occasionally to examine discarded technology with surprising knowledge. "This is a quantum stabilizer," she said, holding up a component Kale had passed over as worthless. "Still functional, just needs recalibration." "How do you know that?" Kale asked, surprised. "They programmed me with technical knowledge for sabotage and repair in the field." She turned the device over in her hands. "I contain many libraries." When they returned to the workshop, Nira demonstrated her technical skills by helping Kale repair a damaged hover drone, a project he had abandoned months ago as hopeless. Her slender fingers, despite the small claws, moved with precision, manipulating delicate components with ease. "There," she said as the drone hummed to life, rising a few inches above the workbench. "It should function correctly now." Kale stared at her in amazement. "You're full of surprises, aren't you?" A small smile lit up her face, the first he had seen. "I'm learning new things about myself every day." That night, disaster nearly struck. Kale awoke to intense heat and the smell of burning fabric. Nira was thrashing on the cot he had set up for her, her skin glowing bright orange, wisps of smoke rising from the blanket covering her. "Nira!" Kale shouted, rushing to her side. "Wake up!" Her eyes snapped open, no longer amber but blazing like twin suns. She screamed, a sound that was not entirely human, and bolts of energy burst from her fingertips, scorching the wall behind her. "It's okay," Kale said desperately, afraid to touch her burning skin. "You're having a nightmare. You're safe." Recognition slowly dawned in her eyes, and the glow began to fade. Tears evaporated into steam as they rolled down her cheeks. "I could have killed you," she whispered, horror in her voice. "But you didn't." Kale cautiously sat beside her. "Was it a memory?" Nira nodded. "The tests. They would stimulate pain responses to see how the energy manifested." Kale's jaw tightened. "These people who made you, they're monsters. They said they were creating monsters to fight monsters." Nira looked at her hands, where the glow had finally subsided. "Perhaps they succeeded." "You're not a monster," Kale said firmly. "But we need to find a way for you to control this power before." He didn't finish the sentence. "Before someone gets hurt. Before they come for you. Before I have to choose between you and my own safety." The next morning, Kale moved his most valuable equipment to a secure location, then took Nira to an abandoned mining pit several kilometers from his workshop. The massive excavation, 100 meters across and twice as deep, was the perfect place for what he had in mind. "If you can't control your power when you're afraid or angry, then we need to help you feel those things in a controlled environment," he explained. "Learn to channel the energy rather than letting it explode." Nira looked dubious. "It is not so simple. Nothing worth doing ever is." Kale picked up a stone and threw it at her without warning. Nira's reaction was instantaneous and shocking. She didn't dodge. Instead, her hand shot out, and a burst of golden energy reduced the stone to dust before it reached her. "Impressive," Kale said, hiding his alarm behind a veneer of calm. "But that was instinct. I wanted to try to summon that energy deliberately." For hours, they worked together. Nira struggled to access her power without the trigger of fear or anger. When she finally managed to produce a sustained glow around her hands, her face lit up with a mixture of pride and wonder. "I never knew. They never allowed me to explore this part of myself," she said, examining the nimbus of energy surrounding her fingers. "It was always about weaponizing, never understanding." As days passed, Nira's control improved. She learned to direct her energy in focused bursts, to regulate her body temperature, even to use the heat to shape metal. Kale began to see the potential in her abilities beyond weapons. She could weld without tools, sterilize equipment, provide heat in Dravis 9's bitter cold nights. But her progress came with a cost. Each use of her powers made her more detectable to anyone looking for unusual energy signatures. And someone was definitely looking. The orbiting satellite had been tracking these energy spikes, analyzing them, confirming what its master suspected. Subject D7 was not only alive, but evolving, gaining control of abilities that had been deemed too unstable during testing. In his examination of Nira, Kale discovered something unexpected, a small, outdated data module embedded in the scales at the base of her skull. With her permission, he carefully extracted it and connected it to his system. Most of the data was corrupted, but what remained painted a disturbing picture. Project Dragones wasn't merely creating weapons. They were attempting to resurrect an extinct species using fragmentary DNA recovered from ancient remains. The dragons, according to the files, had once been sentient, spacefaring beings who had mysteriously vanished from the galaxy millennia ago. They weren't just animals, Kale said in wonder as he scrolled through the information. They were an advanced civilization. Nira absorbed this revelation in silence, her fingers tracing the small horns on her forehead. "Then I am not merely a weapon. I am a legacy." Before they could discuss further implications, Kale's perimeter alarm blared to life. He rushed to the security monitor and felt his heart sink. A sleek, unmarked spacecraft was descending toward the outskirts of the junkyard. "They're here," he said grimly. Neera stood, her body already beginning to glow with defensive energy. "You should leave now, Kale. This is my fight." "Like hell it is." Kale grabbed his pulse rifle from the wall, an outdated model, but still functional. "I didn't nurse you back to health just to abandon you to those butchers. They will kill you." Her voice cracked with emotion. "You are not designed for combat. Neither were you, apparently." Kale checked the rifle's charge. "Besides, I got a few tricks up my sleeve. This isn't the first time someone's come looking for something I've salvaged." They had planned for this possibility. Kale triggered a series of false heat signatures around the junkyard, decoys to confuse their pursuers, while they escaped through a maintenance tunnel that ran beneath the workshop. The tunnel, a relic from the planet's mining days, connected to a vast network of abandoned excavations. Kale had spent years mapping these passages, using them to move valuable salvage without attracting attention. "Where are we going?" Neera asked as they hurried through the dimly lit corridor. "There's an old research outpost about 5 kilometers from here. Been abandoned for decades, but the structure is sound, and it has something we might need." The journey through the tunnels was arduous. Several times, they had to stop while Neera regained control of her energy output, the stress of pursuit causing dangerous flare-ups. "Focus," Kale urged during one such episode. "Remember what we practiced?" Neera nodded, her eyes squeezed shut in concentration. The glow surrounding her dimmed to a manageable level. "I'm sorry," she whispered. "I'm still learning." "You're doing better than anyone could expect," Kale assured her. "Come on, we're almost there." The research outpost was half buried in shifting sands, its once gleaming exterior dulled by years of exposure to Dravis 9's harsh environment. Kale led Neera to a heavy blast door and entered a complex sequence into the ancient keypad. "How would he know this code?" Neera asked as the door groaned open. "Found in some old files I salvaged. Been using this place as a backup storage for years." Kale stepped into the darkness beyond. The corporation didn't exactly decommission things properly when they pulled out. Inside, emergency lighting flickered to life, revealing a space that had once been a high-tech laboratory. Most of the equipment had been removed or destroyed, but the basic infrastructure remained intact. "What is this place?" Neera asked, examining the dusty consoles. "Xenobiology Research Station." They were studying the native life forms before deciding the planet wasn't worth the investment. Kale moved purposefully toward a reinforced door at the back of the lab. "But that's not what we're here for." The door opened to reveal a smaller chamber dominated by a massive scanner, far more sophisticated than anything in Kale's workshop. "Deep tissue molecular scanner," he explained. "Military grade. If that tracker is still in you, this will find it." Neera eyed the machine warily. "And if we find it, then we remove it." Kale powered up the scanner. "I'm not much of a surgeon, but I've taken apart enough tech to have a steady hand." The scan took less than a minute. The results confirmed Neera's fears. A sophisticated tracking device was embedded deep in her brainstem, integrated with her nervous system. Removing it surgically would be impossible without specialized equipment. "There has to be another way," Kale muttered, studying the scan results. "Maybe we can block the signal somehow." "No." Neera's voice was suddenly firm. "As long as this remains within me, they will find me, and they will never stop hunting." "What are you suggesting?" Instead of answering, Neera placed her hand on the scanner's display, directly over the image of the tracker. Her eyes began to glow, and Kale felt the temperature in the room rise dramatically. "Neera, wait." Too late. Energy surged from her body, focused inward. She convulsed once, violently, then collapsed to the floor. A thin trickle of silvery blood flowed from her nose. "Neera." Kale dropped to his knees beside her. "What did you do?" Her eyes fluttered open, weak but conscious. "Burned it out," she whispered. "The tracker is dead." Kale helped her to a sitting position, his heart racing with fear and admiration. "That was incredibly reckless. You could have killed yourself. Freedom is worth the risk." She touched the back of her neck, wincing. "But they will have detected the energy surge. We must move quickly." Kale knew she was right. The outpost would be the first place their pursuers checked after the workshop. They needed to find somewhere to hide, to regroup, to plan their next move. But as they prepared to leave, Nira suddenly froze. Her head tilted, as if listening to a sound only she could hear. "What is it?" Kale asked, hand moving instinctively to his weapon. "Energy," she whispered. "Ancient energy. Below us." Her eyes widened. "It recognizes me." Before Kale could question her further, Nira moved to the center of the room and knelt on the floor. Her palms pressed flat against the cold metal, her scales beginning to glow with an intensity he had never seen before. The floor beneath her hands grew hot, then white-hot, melting away to reveal what appeared to be natural stone beneath the structure. "Nira, stop!" Kale shouted, but she seemed entranced, oblivious to his voice. The stone, too, began to glow, revealing complex patterns that resembled circuitry but were clearly not of human design. The patterns responded to Nira's touch, lighting up in sequence like a system coming online after eons of dormancy. A seam appeared in the stone, widening to reveal a hidden chamber below. Without hesitation, Nira slipped through the opening, leaving Kale no choice but to follow. The chamber beneath was vast and ancient, its walls covered in the same circuit-like patterns, all glowing with increasing intensity as Nira moved deeper into the space. At the center stood a crystalline structure that resembled nothing so much as a massive, faceted tree. Kale watched in astonishment as Nira approached the crystal formation. When she touched it, the entire chamber blazed with light, and Nira gasped as if struck by an electric current. Her body arched backward, suspended in midair by unseen forces. The scales across her body expanded, spreading to cover more of her skin. The small horns on her forehead grew larger, more defined, and from her back, what appeared to be membranous wings began to unfold, translucent, and veined with glowing energy. "Nira!" Kale shouted, terrified for her. He tried to approach, but was pushed back by waves of heat and power emanating from her transformed body. What happened next defied explanation. The crystal structure projected images into the air around them. Star maps, ancient structures, beings that resembled evolved versions of what Nira was becoming. And information, vast quantities of it, flowed directly into Nira's mind. When she finally returned to the ground, she was changed. Her eyes glowed with inner knowledge, and her posture carried a new confidence, a sense of purpose that hadn't been there before. "Kale," she said, her voice resonating in a way that made the very air vibrate. "I understand now." "Understand what?" he asked, cautiously approaching. "What I am. Why I was created." She looked at her transformed hands, where scales now covered most of her skin. "The scientists who made me didn't know. They found dragon DNA and saw weapons potential, but they had no idea what they were tampering with." "And what were they tampering with?" "The Guardians." Nira gestured to the images still hovering in the air. The dragons weren't just another species. They were custodians of balance in the galaxy, genetically engineered by an even older race to maintain harmony between stars. The implications staggered Kale. "You're saying these dragons were some kind of cosmic stewards?" "More than that. They were living repositories of knowledge, carrying within their DNA the wisdom of the ancients." Nira touched the crystal tree once more, and new images appeared. Dragons using abilities similar to hers, but far more advanced, manipulating energy on a scale Kale could barely comprehend. The scientists who created me accidentally tapped into this legacy. They thought they were creating a weapon, but they were actually awakening an ancient lineage. Kale struggled to absorb what she was telling him. "And this place? What is it?" "A seed vault, one of many left behind when the dragons ascended to another plane of existence. They knew someday their knowledge would be needed again." Nira's wings flexed slightly, sending ripples of light across their surface. "The vault recognized the dragon DNA in me. It completed what was unfinished." Before Kale could process this revelation, an explosion rocked the outpost above them. Dust and debris rained down from the ceiling. "They found us," Kale said grimly, raising his pulse rifle. "Yes." Nira's expression hardened. "But they have found more than they bargained for." They made their way back to the lab level to find it swarming with armored figures. Military-grade weapons were trained on them the moment they emerged from a hidden chamber. "Subject D7, one of the figures announced, you are property of Project Dragonis. Surrender immediately." Nira stepped forward, her transformed appearance causing visible shock among the recovery team. "I am not property," she declared, her voice carrying that same strange resonance. "I am legacy, and you have committed atrocities against it." The leader of the team signaled, and weapons powered up with an ominous whine. "Take them both. Kill the civilian if necessary." What followed was chaos. Nira's power, amplified by her transformation and her new understanding of its origins, erupted with devastating precision. She moved with inhuman speed, wings spreading to create shields of pure energy that deflected weapons' fire. Kale fought alongside her, his salvaged rifle proving surprisingly effective against their high-tech armor. But he was still human, still vulnerable. A stray bolt caught him in the shoulder, spinning him to the ground with a cry of pain. Nira's reaction was immediate and terrifying. Seeing Kale injured triggered something primal in her. The temperature in the lab soared to unbearable levels as her body became a conduit for raw power. Wings fully extended, she rose several feet into the air, her eyes blazing like twin stars. "You will not take another life," she declared, her voice no longer entirely her own. It carried echoes of ancient power, of knowledge long forgotten. Energy burst from her in a controlled wave, precise enough to disable their attackers without killing them. Weapons melted, armor systems failed, and one by one, the recovery team collapsed, unconscious but alive. When it was over, Nira landed beside Kale, her power receding enough that she could touch him without causing harm. Gently, she examined his wound. "It's not bad," he grunted, though the pain was evident in his face. "Just a glancing hit. I can heal it," she said, placing her palm over the injury. A warm glow spread from her hand, and Kale felt the pain begin to subside as damaged tissue knitted itself back together. "Another new trick?" he asked weakly. "The vault showed me many things." She helped him to his feet. "But we must leave quickly." These were merely the advance team. They gathered what supplies they could salvage and fled deeper into the tunnel network. Nira's enhanced senses guided them through passages Kale had never mapped, toward what she claimed was another ancient structure buried beneath the planet's surface. "There is a reason your corporation abandoned this planet so quickly," she explained as they traveled. "They sensed the dragon technology beneath the surface but couldn't access it. It made them uncomfortable. And this place we're heading to, what is it?" "A gateway." Nira's expression was somber. The vault transmitted coordinates of similar sites across the galaxy. Places where dragon knowledge is stored. Places that must be protected. From people like Project Dragonis, Kale surmised. From anyone who would weaponize wisdom meant to preserve. They reached their destination after hours of difficult travel. Unlike the research outpost, this structure had no human construction above it. It was completely buried, accessible only through an ancient tunnel that had been deliberately hidden. The gateway itself was breathtaking, a massive arch of the same crystalline material as the tree in the vault, inscribed with the same circuit-like patterns. It hummed with dormant energy that responded to Nira's presence, lighting up as she approached. "This leads to a network that spans the galaxy," she explained, touching the arch reverently. "The dragons created it to move quickly between their outposts." Kale looked skeptical. "A teleportation network? That's supposed to be theoretical. Your science is young." Nira smiled slightly. "There is much you have yet to rediscover." As the gateway powered up, revealing a swirling vortex of energy within the arch, Kale was struck by the realization that everything was about to change. His solitary existence on Dravis 9, his hand-to-mouth survival in the Junkyard. It all seemed so small now, in the face of what Nira had revealed. I need to go, Kale, Neera said softly. There are others like me. Failed experiments discarded when they didn't meet military specifications. The vaults show me how to find them. And there are facilities that must be shut down, knowledge that must be protected. Kale nodded, a lump forming in his throat. He had known this moment would come from the instant he'd found her in that broken containment unit. She was never meant to stay in this forgotten corner of the galaxy. Understand, he said, trying to keep his voice steady. You have a purpose now. Neera studied his face, her luminous eyes seeing more than he wanted to reveal. Come with me, she said simply. Kale blinked in surprise. What? Come with me, she repeated. You saved me when no one else would. You saw value in what others discarded. She held out her hand, scales shimmering in the energy light from the gateway. There's a place for you in this journey. Kale looked at the gateway, then back at Neera's transformed visage. A week ago, he had been a simple salvager, eking out a lonely existence on a forgotten planet. Now he stood on the threshold of something vast and ancient, invited to step into a legend he had believed was only myth. What exactly would I be signing up for? He asked, though he already knew his answer. To help me find others like me. To expose the truth about Project Dragonis. To protect knowledge that could heal worlds or destroy them. Her expression softened. To continue teaching me what it means to be human, even as I embrace what I am not. Kale took her hand. Well, when you put it that way, how could I refuse? Together, they stepped through the gateway, leaving behind the Junkyard planet where a discarded experiment and a solitary salvager had found each other. Ahead lay uncertainty, danger, and wonders beyond imagination. As the gateway closed behind them, Neera's wings spread wide, glowing with internal fire, her eyes fixed on the endless possibilities that awaited. She was no longer just a failed weapon or even merely a guardian reborn. She was the future of a legacy nearly lost, saved by the simple kindness of someone who knew what it meant to be deemed worthless. And Kale, watching her transformation with awe and pride, knew that in saving her, he had also saved himself. Far above the abandoned planet, the satellite continued its silent orbit, recording the massive energy spike as the ancient gateway activated. But by the time the full recovery force arrived, there was nothing to find but an empty research outpost and melted weapons scattered across the floor. Subject D7 had vanished, and with her, the key to powers that had once shepherded stars. In a vast network between worlds, Neera and Kale emerged onto a starlit platform overlooking an alien landscape of crystalline forests and purple skies. The air crackled with the same energy that now flowed through Neera's veins. Where are we? Kale asked, his voice hushed with wonder. The beginning, Neera replied, her wings catching. Starlight like stained glass. And also the end of being discarded. Before them stretched a path illuminated by living light, leading toward structures that pulsed with the same ancient power that had awakened within her. It was a journey that would span stars and centuries, full of dangers and discoveries beyond imagination. But they would face it together. The dragon girl who had been created as a weapon but chose to be a guardian, and the man who had found her starving in a junkyard and chosen to save her. In that choice, both had found their redemption, and in each other, they had found a future worth fighting for.